comic book fans. Kevin Gibbon back with you once again. This week we're going to talk about my franchise, Carl Vincent, Vampire Hunter. If you love comics as much as I do, you're going to subscribe to my channel. I review comics for Comic Crusaders. I also have my own franchises, Adolescent Radioactive Samurai Platypi and Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter. They're available on Comics Central, Indie Planet, and Comixology. Check them out. Stay tuned to this broadcast for more information. Also, like the Facebook pages for each franchise. Check out my Patreon site for some neat original artwork and shows that you won't find on YouTube. With Carl Vincent, I was watching an old Don Knotts movie called The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, and the thought came to mind, what if Don Knotts were a vampire hunter? In a flash, I committed this idea to paper and developed the character to look like myself. Other influences included the old Night Stalker TV series with Darren McGavin and the original Fright Night movies with Roddy McDowall and William Ragsdale. Carl Vincent is a reluctant vampire hunter detective that became convinced of the reality of Nosferatu. When he decided to hunt these sinister creatures of the night, eventually he lost everything. His job, his family, his self-respect, and his wife Barbara thinks he's crazy and wants a divorce. His oldest son Keith won't talk to him at all anymore since he announced to Keith's class on career day he was going to quit his job to hunt vampires. The latest comic book version is Dracula Rising. In Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter Dracula Rising #1, we're going to look at issues #1 and #2 today. In #1, Carl is visited in true noir style by a mysterious lady in black who sends him on a wild goose chase in hunt of a vampire named Lo. But what he discovers is something more sinister as he blacks out and blood is drawn from his arm. Dracula's daughter, Dominica. Alright, let's talk about issue #1. I am the writer, Kevin Gibbon. My artist is Rodolfo Ezequiel. The prologue sees Carl Vincent having a nightmare about Christmas Day 1975, a day that replays itself in Carl Vincent's mind every day of his life. You see, on that day, Stephen Vincent, Carl's uncle, disappeared. Previous Christmas, 1974, Stephen's wife disappeared, and we see the possibility of these creatures being involved in Stephen's disappearance. Now, before Carl found out the reality of vampires, he didn't think about his uncle being taken by vampires. But ever since he found out the reality of vampires and that vampires exist, he's developed this recurring nightmare about his uncle, Stephen Vincent, falling victim to vampires. The splash page for issue 1 shows him in a cold sweat dreaming about his uncle and what happened to him. A little subplot I'm developing. It's not completely developed yet, but we will have it developed by issue 5. This story, Dracula Rising, takes place over 5 issues and will be collected into a trade paperback very soon. We are actually 6 pages away from completing the story, and you can get issues 1 through 4 right now on Indie Planet in a hard copy. You can also get digital copies. Some of them are free. You might want to check that out. We also have digital copies on Drive-Thru Comics, Comixology, Comics Central, and other places if you're interested in finding them. Carl's office is 184 High Street in Boston, Massachusetts. And in true noir style, here comes a mysterious lady in black. The door was locked, but somehow it's now opened. The lady introduces herself as Dominique Alexander. The lady comes in and claims that she's been hunted by a vampire who's killed several of her family members, and she wants Carl's help to track him down. So Carl and this mysterious lady, Dominique Alexander, head to the cemetery where she says this vampire, which she names Lo, which is an homage to the Nicolas Cage character. Nicolas Cage played a vampire named Lo in 1988's Kiss of the Vampire. And we see them go to this cemetery, and then Carl passes out. Several hours later, he comes to realize it says that someone has drawn blood from his arm, and all of a sudden, someone else knocks at the door. It's his friend, Nathan. Only this isn't the Nathan he met on a previous mission. This is Athanasius Timon, a time traveler from the future. The Nathan that's alive in our day cannot yet travel through time. Nathan is an immortal, and his daughter also features prominently, Athena Timon, which we'll meet later on in issue 2. But in this comic, Athanasius Timon is an immortal time traveler. Athanasius, or Nathan as we will call him in this century, Nathan is kind of like my answer to Marvel's Uatu the Watcher. He's going to to appear in every book I write. He's in Foul Blood. He's in Last Rites: The Return of Sebastian Basilis. He will be in every book that I write. This character will show up and play some sort of function. Sometimes just as a cameo, and other times he'll have a more prominent role. He had a bigger role in Last Rites: The Return of Sebastian Basilis, the previous story, which is a novel and available on Amazon. If you are interested, check out the novel on Amazon. But anyway, Nathan comes into the office and says to Carl, "There's been a breach in the space-time continuum," to which Carl says, "I hate when that happens." And he tells Carl that the woman he met earlier was not Dominique Alexander. Her real name is Dominica, and she's from the future. She is Dracula's daughter. She is alive in this day, but she's only 4 years old. And Carl says, "Dracula's dead. I sent his ass back to hell a few months ago. That was in another story." Nathan explains that Dracula never stays dead for long, and we go through the past of what happened. Dracula has indeed been sent back to hell. Dominica will try to resurrect him in time for the equality equinox. If they succeed, they will become all-powerful and be able to subjugate mankind to their will. So Dominica has to resurrect her father, Dracula, and they have to discover these 4 equality crystals, which they will use in a ritual in time for the equality equinox. Only the bloodline created by Dracula and this gypsy sorceress named Dragana, her name is Vadoma, her surname is Vadoma, only the bloodline created by them two, which was a manifest in Dominica, will activate the crystals during the equality equinox. That is why Dracula married Dragana and created Dominica in the first place. Here we see the minions searching, scouring the countryside for Dragana, and Dracana is fled, but eventually the minions catch up with Dragana. Dracula is seeking his wife and daughter for this ritual. When Dracula finally finds Dragana at the end of issue 1, she has a surprise for him. She pulls out one of the equality crystals, which she has acquired, and sends Vlad back to hell by the end of issue 1. Then we come to issue 2. We're going to talk about issues 1 and 2 today, and then we're going to leave it there. If you're interested, you can go to Indie Planet, Comixology, Comic Central, discover the free versions. Issue 2 opens with Carl's former partner, who's African American. That's Trevor Jackson. He's a detective in Brooklyn. He's chasing down a perp, catches the perp, and that's just to give the opening a little bit of action. And now Trevor goes to the FBI training center to talk to his niece, Ileana Janae Jackson, and they're discussing Carl. Trevor says that Carl went off the deep end. He went crazy after I left. Carl started hunting vampires, and Ileana says, well, maybe he's not so crazy after all. And they get into an argument, and Ileana informs Trevor that she is going to Boston to talk to Carl. He forbids her, but of course she's a grown woman. You can't forbid me from anything because I'm doing what I want to do. And then we open on this young woman fleeing through the forests. We find out the forest is Akagora, Japan's suicide forest. And that is an actual forest in Japan, which is famous for having people go there to commit suicide. And I thought it would be a creepy place to open this part of the book. Here's our hero, Kate Bryant. Kate is half Japanese, half Caucasian. Her father was Gabriel Bryant. And she's following this young woman, trying to talk her out of going into the forest. But she finds her too late. The woman has hanged herself, and there are other suicide victims. And one of them happens to be her father, Gabriel Bryant. And she's like, Dad. But yet this is impossible because this is not how her father died. And the splash page has Gabriel saying, avenge me. Kate wakes up. It's all been a bad dream. And we come to find out that Kate has been dreaming about different ways for her father to die. And just about then, Carl calls her and tells her she has to go on this special mission into the forest that she was just dreaming about, Kagora. And then Carl explains that Athena is going to be joining them on this mission to help find one of the equality crystals, which is hidden somewhere in Akagora. So we come up to Kate, who's actually in Akagora now. It's not a dream, and Dominica arrives. And before Kate can pull out a cross or any of her vampire hunting gear, in comes Dominica's familiar, who is also a ninja warrior. So the fight begins. Ninja on ninja, Kate on the familiar of Dominica. We get a little action piece there. Then Dominica, the fight gives her enough time to find the equality crystal, turn into a bat, and flee the scene. And then we come up on Trevor going to his brother's house. Bob is in an interracial relationship with a white woman named Marie. Trevor tells them that Ileana has gone to Boston to hook up with his former partner. And then we cut to Ileana at Carl's office, where she tells him that she wants to join him on his vampire hunting crusade because she has been bitten by a vampire and she needs his help. Carl and Ileana go back to Brooklyn while Trevor goes to Boston in search of Carl. So he breaks into Carl's office. Shouldn't do that, but he's not happy with Carl. He wants to find him, and he's very upset because his daughter wants to go hunting vampires with him. So he breaks into Carl's office, and he sees a scrapbook, which is newspaper clippings of the disappearance of Lyle Chauncey, who was Carl's partner after Trevor moved back to Brooklyn. Issue 2 closes with Carl and Ileana facing the vampire that bit her, could possibly turn her if they don't kill this vampire. And that's where that issue ends. Can Carl and Ileana defeat the vampire that bit her, and she's in danger of turning if she doesn't kill this particular vampire right here? Will they succeed? To be continued. And that's all I wanted to talk about today was Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter. The first 2 issues. Now you can get these issues. Check out the first issue for free. You can get a hard copy on Indie Planet. Free digital version on Indie Planet, plus Drive-Thru Comics, Comixology, Comics Central. I put it up quite a few places. So check it out. Issue 2, I think, is very compelling when we look at Kate's backstory. And her backstory is actually on Indie Planet 2. Files of Carl Vincent number 2. The Kate Bryant story, which explains what really happened to her father, how she became a kunoichi, or a female ninja. Check that out on Indie Planet. And once again, Comixology, Comics Central, and Drive-Thru Comics also has that comic book available. So until next time, this is Kevin Gibbons saying so long, keep reading those comics. If you love comics as much as I do, you're going to subscribe to my channel. I review comics for Comic Crusaders. I also have my own franchises, Adolescent Radioactive Samurai Platypi and Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter. They're available on Comics Central, Indie Planet, and Comixology. Check them out. Stay tuned to this broadcast for more information. Also, like the Facebook pages for each franchise. Check out my Patreon site for some neat original artwork and shows that you won't find on YouTube.